Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, no Andy Kamenetsky. He is still on his camping trip, but I've got something even better than the people I've had earlier in the week, which are also better. I've got Mo Dakhil on the show. We're going to cover literally everything next on Locked On Lakers. Really
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, especially when news breaks. Never behind a paywall. Always fresh Lakers content there available for you. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to get the visual version to see all of this. Plus, there's like fun little stuff that we do on the video version of it. Do want to let you know 170 South La Brea in Los Angeles. That is the location of the Doer store, makers of the most comfortable pants and clothes that you'll ever find. Saturday, August 27th, we're going to be doing a live show there. You send us questions, you show up, and you can be part of the show to ask us questions. A big Lakers mailbag episode at the Doer store, 170 South La Brea. Will be giving away stuff there. You can use the discount code LOCKEDON15, which works now on the shopdoer.com website. All that stuff. Mo Dakhil is an avid wearer of pants, and so I can only presume that you will be there.
I wear pants? What?
At least in professional settings, is my understanding. What you do at home, Mo, is your own thing.
Fair enough.
You know him. He podcasts for The Athletic. He writes for Bleacher Report. He is the host of, I think, one of the best segments that you can find on basketball internets, the One Mo Thing segment. You can get it at his Twitter feed, Mo Dakhil NBA. Like, all of this stuff is fantastic. He is one of our favorite people in the NBA. He's just one of our favorite people because he's a genuinely great guy. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Oh, no, thank you for having me after that intro. But wouldn't it be weird if I did a heel turn and just became pure evil? Now that everybody's kind of like, oh, he's so nice, and now I just come in with I should grow out like a really thin mustache and just be pure evil at this point. Evil Mo.
Speaking of, it's not a bad idea. It's all marketing. But I will say this: I was a little concerned this morning when the first thing I saw on your Twitter feed was you retweeting a story from Bloomberg News about how guests now are being paid up to $50,000 to appear on podcasts. So I appreciate you at least cutting that down a little bit for the Locked On audience, but
yeah, where's my bag? That's kind of, I looked at it going like, wait a minute.
So much I want to get into because Mo is a guy who just understands the game, understands the NBA. But before we do that, it's sad. It's a sad day on Wednesday in LA. People mourning the death of Vin Scully, 94 years old, obviously broadcasted Dodger games for a bunch of other stuff too. For, I believe it was 67 years, something
that's
absolutely insane. One of the things that I think is so fascinating is that type of coverage where everyone is kind of unified into one voice, who delivers the experience of the game, whether that's on television, whether it's on radio, simulcast, however it's been done. I don't think you can do that anymore. Like, I don't think there can be another Chick Hearn. I don't think there can be another Vin Scully. And it's not just because of their excellence. It's also because that world just doesn't exist. So 2 questions here. First, would you agree with that? And then second, how do you think that impacts the way that we take in these games and these sports? Because so much of what we talk about with basketball is about how the game is covered and how people talk about it on TV and what people say about it on Twitter.
Well, I think, the starting point is, I don't think we're going to have another Vin Scully or another Chick Hearn or, whoever what Mr. Buck in St. Louis. I forgot his first name.
Yeah, Jack Buck. Joe's dad.
Joe's dad, right. I almost said Joe Buck, but again, also Joe Buck with football, like we're going to be, used to it in that sense. But now you just look at it and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. But now you're going to have streams with different options, and you can go, okay, ESPN does it all the time, right? National championship game. We have our regular coverage. We have our coaches feed and things like that. They did the Manning cast to go alongside Monday Night Football. So it's like, okay, you didn't want to hear the regular broadcast. Well, here's something that's kind of like a podcast and the game at the same time, and I think you're going to see more of those things. So the variety is going to be this. So there's not going to be a consistency where this is the voice of this team.
Mm-hmm.
There is nobody else. You know what you're hearing. You know what you're who's talking when you hear it's time for Dodger baseball. Or Chick Hearn going completely nuts and telling you the game's over with, the refrigerator doors closed, the lights are out, the Jello, the butter's getting harder, the Jello's
all that
jiggling. But that's that thing. We're used to it with Mike Breen with Bang, and stuff. But like now we're gonna have so many different options. It's gonna be hard to kind of have that.
And it fragments. Like, people think about sports like the classic romantic way to talk about sports is this great unifier, and it irons out all of our differences and all these other things. And to some degree, that's true. To a large degree, is and has always been fantasy. Sports have always been political. Sports have always had divisive things in it. But to whatever degree that there is that unifying factor in it, I do think it's based on that common experience in which we all take in the game. And that ain't there anymore, because even if you are listening, you're for a lot of people, if you're hardcore, you're following on social media while you're doing, you're listening to a live tweet. There are simulcasts going on. Like, it's like I kind of just, I spent a lot of my day thinking about just the impact and what is so vastly different about the world that Vin Scully and Chick Hearn came into, and the one that we're in now. And it,
I mean, just go even different. Just look at the fact the NFL or Amazon, who has the NFL now, just signed on with a group called Dude Perfect to present another stream. So there's just so much different things, and you're right. Like, it's going to be a little bit weird for a while, and it's just part of it is I just think the changing dynamics of people want different things when they're watching the sport now, and I think that's kind of the ultimate thing. For a while there's going to be alternate broadcasts. I think for everything now. Over the we'll see if that changes or if it becomes too much or whatnot, but I think we'll see several different ones, and then that'll just make it even harder to get the Chick Hearns and the Vin Scullys, or the Joe Buck's going to be on an alternate
people
broadcast.
Even listen to their local broadcast anyway. It's true. It's all that stuff it's all changing, Mo. We're just getting old.
I refuse.
Your friend my friend Zach Harper, he's got the early sort of evaluations of tiers in the NBA, and is not putting the Lakers in a place that I think Lakers fans are going to particularly like. I want to get your opinion on that stuff. We'll do it next. First, I do want to tell you, I mentioned it at the top of the show, Duer, D-U-E-R. These guys make the most incredibly comfortable clothes that are also incredibly versatile. It's performance clothing. It's lifestyle clothing that adapts to your lifestyle. You're going to the office. I think people still do that. You're running around the park with the kids. You're on your bike. You're doing whatever. You don't have to change clothes 75 times and do that. Like this, you can get a pair of pants. You can put on a shirt, and it'll work with you all day long. And it's Duer, D-U-E-R. You go to the store, 170 South La Brea. You will understand what it is that I'm talking about. If you use our code LOCKEDON15, get 15% off, whether that's in the store or online. These are staple items, Mo. I know you're a guy who likes a few neutrals. You like the things that you can wear every day, and then throw in a pop of color on the top, a pop of color in on the bottom. That's how Mo Dakhil does it, and that's how you can do it too with Duer. I got the Live Free Adventure pants. I've got a couple t-shirts. I got the No Sweat joggers, all of it. So again, 170 South La Brea in Mid-City is where you go. Use the discount code LOCKEDON15, whether online or at the store. And we'll see everybody on August 27th for our live taping there. Big mailbag episode. Shop Duer, Locked On Lakers also brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events and the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. Reviews of and news from every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, combat sports. I know, Mo, you're a combat sports guy. You got to have the combat sports line.
Yes.
Who's going to get their butt kicked? That's what that line is. Over, under on butt kicking. Esports. You can bet on esports. I didn't know that, but you can. That's a thing. BetOnline continues to be the online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They got you covered. Head on to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Two things. First, I really genuinely did not know that you could gamble on esports.
That's wild. I didn't know.
That seems like a really easy way for me to lose money.
Gambling of any sort for me is never really fruitful.
Yeah. Second, I do appreciate you sending me very promptly an invoice for the first segment during
each segment, depending on how many words, and I have somebody counting the words I say. Right. Yeah. That's how I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I will get that money paid to you promptly. Our friend Zach Harper over at The Athletic, you work with him on all them fancy podcasts that they produce over there. He's got a sort of early, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a power ranking, but it's kind of a tier system of where teams look like they fit right now. He's got the Lakers maybe a play-in tournament type team. When you look at what the Lakers have done this offseason, you find that to be a fair evaluation of where they fit right now in the West?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Brian. Like, you look at it and you go, wow, like I kind of like the guys they brought in, but that doesn't fix what their glaring issues are. I mean, first there's and I actually wrote a piece for it on Bleacher Report. I think they got younger, they got a little more athletic, they got potentially better on defense. But they still don't have a shooter.
Hard to get worse.
Oh, that's a good point. Actually, no, you want to bet, like, that's more along those lines of you got to watch out. And I think, one thing we don't talk about a lot about last season was the injury problems for the Lakers. Like, I don't think the season goes as poorly if they're even just a little more healthy than they were. And I'm not talking Kendrick Nunn. But LeBron missing games, AD missing games, and things like that. Like, I think you're in a much more challenging situation, but they're still the same team at the end of the day. It's what do you do with Westbrook? Like, and the answer isn't trade him because nobody wants him. Sorry, like, that's just not a.
I answered this question. I did Spectrum, the Lakers TV station. I did their studio show on Tuesday, and they like a 1 to 10 thing, like. 1 to 10, do you think Russell Westbrook opens the season with the Lakers? And I was like, it's a 9. Like, I don't see where he goes in between if Brooklyn really does. And I know, like, I guess we'll talk about this in a second. I guess, like, they're having that big summit meeting with Durant and Joe Tsai and all that. But if Brooklyn makes any kind of effort to keep Durant around, they're not just going to, like, trade Kyrie for Russell freaking Westbrook, like, while they're trying to make that work.
It's not even that. It's almost the way the Lakers front office has kind of gone about this stuff is asinine and very arrogant.
Why do you mean?
Well, it's the way the Lakers first operate. But forget about the Kyrie trade. But remember, like, 2 weeks back, the Buddy Hield and Miles Turner deal was dead because the Lakers wouldn't include a second first-round pick. And it's, the idea that you think you're going to be able to get off Russell Westbrook's contract, send one pick, and get 2 players back that can actually play basketball and are better than most of the guys you have on your team, minus obviously the main 2, it's kind of asinine. And thinking that you're going to be able to do that and not be required to put in the second pick. If you're going to get off Russell Westbrook's contract, is going to be the cost of at least your one future first-round draft pick. To get players back that can help you, it's going to at least cost you another first-round draft pick. And that's pretty much just the cost of doing business.
Which deal do you like better? Assuming Kyrie comes with someone, Joe Harris. I mean, if I'm the Lakers, I've said this 100 times, and I'll keep saying it 100 more. the Lakers, instead of trying to avoid salary, taking on, they should demand as many human beings as they can possibly get, in all of these trades. If we give you 2 draft picks, what if we gave you a second rounder? Could we get another human being back? Like, if you're going to go all in, you need more players. You talk about Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, whether you like that deal more than Kyrie and whatever, and you can tell me that in a second. Those 2 guys are at worst the 4th and 5th best players on this team the minute you trade for them, I guess, depending on what you think about Hield versus like Kendrick Nunn or something like that. But those guys are automatically in your top 5, the minute you acquire them.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually like both deals. It's just a matter of how do you want to build your team, and I think I would more likely do the Indiana deal. One, because I think Buddy Hield's solid shooter is something is a need, something that maybe the Lakers should have thought about last season.
Oh, you mean when they had a Buddy Hield trade ready to go and then decided to trade for Russell Westbrook?
Yeah, just in that sense. But I think the Miles Turner component to it is, one, it allows AD not have to play center for long stretches, which we all know he should play center, but still it wears him down throughout the year. But it also gives you a little bit of protection in terms of if AD goes down, you at least have a rim protector in Miles Turner, who's been a pretty solid shot blocker for the past few seasons. I think that kind of helps in that area. But I also think, the thing that kind of breaks the deal for me is those 2 guys way more reliable than me trusting Kyrie. And I think that's the scary proposition of trading Kyrie is you never know what's coming next. And it's not a matter – listen, I get it. Last year was weird, the whole vaccine mandate. But I have no guarantee there's not going to be more weirdness with Kyrie. My thing is, there's always going to be something else. There's always going to be another thing that,
Well, Andy's theory is always that he doesn't believe Kyrie really wants to be a full-time basketball player.
I'll push back a little bit, but I think he wants to do all of this on his terms. And I don't think he's good enough to be able to say, I'm dictating all the terms. And it's like, that's not how this works. And, that goes back to Brooklyn also stupidly basically handing the team over to these guys. They should have never signed DeAndre Jordan. I don't care if that was the cost of business of getting KD and Kyrie. You got to start kind of setting the tone of like, you guys don't get to make, you don't get to make those decisions. We'll ask you your input. We'll talk to you about stuff, but we make the decisions on what we're doing. And that led to the several things, getting rid of Kenny Atkinson, not trading Jared Allen, all of these things, that stuff. But I think back to your question, though, I think, for the Lakers, I would just trust the stability of what I'm getting from Indiana, and those guys fit a need. And I'm not saying, listen, I think Kyrie, you probably have a higher ceiling as a team with Kyrie, LeBron, and AD than you do with Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. But there's a level of comfort, I think, and reassurances that like those guys are going to be there, and I can constantly be able to do that. You also got Kyrie on a 1-year deal. What if Kyrie comes in and just says, "Screw it, I'm out"?
I'll tell you. How about this? I worry about this scenario. What if Kyrie comes in, he's on his best behavior, and gives you this model Kyrie performance that you haven't had, and leadership that you haven't seen really ever over the course of his career, and now you have to make the decision: do we re-sign him? Like, well, I remember when the Lakers had like the Dwight thing with Andrew, trading Andrew Bynum and all this other stuff. One of the biggest reasons I was in favor of all of that was because on what planet do you want to be the guy who has to decide whether or not to give Andrew Bynum a long-term contract? And I feel exactly the same because and ultimately it was a bad investment because of his health. I kind of feel the same about Kyrie. I don't want to be Miles Turner's got some injury issues, no question.
Right.
I would feel more comfortable giving him money than I would Kyrie just on a personality basis. Talent aside, obviously it's different.
I would say that I think any team that's looking to re-sign Kyrie needs to kind of do like a 2+1 with the one being a team option or something. Right. I know people are like, well, why would Kyrie sign with that?
Like the James Harden thing. Well, do you think he would do that? Do you think other teams would give him something else? I guess that's the bigger question.
I don't think the market's as big for him as he thinks it is. Just when you look at the fact that he's like, cool, he said, let me negotiate a sign and trade elsewhere. And the Nets were like, by all means, Kyrie, go explore a sign and trade. And then came back going like, yep, I'm opting in. There were no options out there for a sign and trade. That sends a message to Kyrie.
Yeah.
And I think whether he's a Net or a Laker, I think you're going to get Kyrie on his best behavior because he's on that 1-year deal. That's got to shock the system a little bit to him of just like, nobody wanted me on a sign and
Mo,
trade.
he's an American Dennis Schroeder, always overestimating his own market value.
Unfortunately, he's just so much better than Dennis Schroeder as a basketball player. And it's like, I just don't know. I can't see a contender giving him a 4-year guaranteed deal, massive money, and I think that's, I would be shocked by it. The only team I could see doing it is actually the Lakers, if they were able to, with the cap and stuff, but it's like, that just speaks to the level of desperation this team's in.
Let's get to that in a second, because let's get to that. Actually, let's get to that next, because that really does kind of frame where the Lakers are. Coming back with more with Mo. That could, by the way, be a name of a show.
Yeah,
I was saying I like one Mo thing as a segment. And I mentioned at the top of the show, it is one of my favorite things that you can find on NBA social media. But more with Mo could be like that. That sounds like you and me. We're just talking. You're just like, we're just like a guy that I like to check in with, and you make me feel like it's like being wrapped in a warm blanket.
Oh. My friends call me a wet blanket with some of their basketball opinions. So
they can be warm, I guess. Warm and wet. That sounds gross. Part of the reason I think the Lakers ought to go ahead, and whether it's for Kyrie eventually, and I have a couple questions about the mechanics of that in a second, or whether it's in a Indiana deal or some sort of, you get players from Utah if they end up trading, however it works. Part of the reason I think they shouldn't be so precious about this second pick is you're like 85% in. And I don't think the 15% is worth that much. I don't know I think we're finding that the market, if you have Kendrick Nunn, THT, and 2 first-round picks to offer people, isn't that good. It's not going to get you a star player. It's not going to get you, it's only going to get you kind of flawed stuff or second-tier, solid but second-tier guys like Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. If I don't know if the Lakers get themselves where they want to go if they make these deals and they push all the chips in, but I'm 100% sure they don't get there if they don't. So, like, where do you come down on the idea of like holding, out for something better or whatever might be versus kind of being pot committed now?
Yeah, I just don't think. I think it's silly that they're holding on to the second pick, not because they don't value keeping your future, ready to go and intact and having the ability there, but you're not going to be in a position to trade for a high level guy right now. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, you don't have the path. Donovan Mitchell's on the market. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell would look great in a Laker uniform. You don't have the draft picks for that.
Russell Westbrook is available.
Right.
Utah's it goes Stockton and Malone. Russell Westbrook will be the third most accomplished player in Utah Jazz history. Tell me Danny Ainge doesn't want that.
Right. But it's like, you don't have the draft picks, right? So it's like you have to throw in the second pick, whether it's to go all in for Kyrie or just go with, let's raise the floor with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. I think you kind of have to do it. I think they're just in a position where you can't stand pat, because I think you put it so perfectly. If they just stay the course right now, this team is maybe a play-in tournament team. And that's wild when you say a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis is maybe they're a playoff team. Maybe we're undervaluing the two of them. But they're not going to be
if they play 65 games each and they're the right 65 and they're at the same time, I could see them getting into the top 6. But I mean, one of the things I want to do with you is kind of go through the West a little bit. I want to get your opinion on Minnesota and a couple other teams, and even a couple of teams that are chasing them a little bit. Portland has done some stuff over the offseason that's made them much, much better, I think. So it's crowded. I think your point is right. It's crowded.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't see them getting into the top 4. I know I'm probably jumping the gun with our conversation, but it's just like
Top
with
4.
it's just hard, right?
Yeah.
Like it's challenging. Now, granted, every season is different. We know one or two teams, knock on wood, hopefully none of them, but like eventually injuries get in the way and things like that. But you have no guarantee with the Lakers that they're going to be healthy. We haven't seen it for the past 2 seasons, and we can give all the reasons why or whatnot, but it's just the facts. And I think that's the challenge that the Lakers got to kind of figure out. So I think you have to throw in that second pick to get a deal. And I don't think you can sit there and wait, like we're going to wait till the next disgruntled stars, because all of these other teams have a better package than you. And let's be honest, not a lot of teams are going to want to just gift them a star the way they got, Pau Gasol and things like that. And all of that stuff. I don't think it's something that's going to be as easily gotten. So I think you got to make your move now. And whether it's with the Nets, and we don't even know if the Nets are even that willing right now to move Kyrie.
That's okay. That was going to be the question I asked you, because like the school of thought is they want to resolve it with Durant first. We'll see how this meeting goes and how much leaks out of it and all that stuff and so on. And the landscape will continue to shift and all that. But like that part of it, I get. If I'm Brooklyn, I'm like, no, we're just going to keep this. Like, we have a good supporting cast. We've got Kyrie Irving. We've got Ben Simmons, who, if he's healthy, I think has been a little bit over slandered. I think across the league, like people forget, like he's an all-star. Like he is an all-star player.
All NBA guy. He was an all NBA guy, all defensive, potential defensive player of the year. Now we all have a lot of questions because we got to figure out where he's at
mentally and physically. And all that, but he's not. He's sort of like people talk about him like Rudy Gobert, like because he's got some flaws that you can see in a playoff series or whatever. It goes from being like, ooh, he's a kind of a flawed guy, maybe causes some fit issues or whatever. Westbrook in his prime, same questions. To he's trash, and like Ben Simmons is excellent, and so I've got that supporting cast. I've got Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving. I'm doing whatever I possibly can to just see what happens and play 40 games. And KD looks up and they're 28-12. And he's like, okay, maybe things aren't so bad here. Like that's the plan, I would think.
Right. And I think that's kind of for me, barring a situation where they could find a way to get him to Phoenix or Miami, which none of this seems likely. Cause those are two teams that don't really have a package to put together to get KD, I don't see a better situation for him. And you kind of lined it up perfectly. And just Ben Simmons fits perfectly with this squad. Like his weaknesses, they can cover up with KD and Kyrie.
Right. And Joe Harris and
Joe Harris, a healthy Curry Joe Harris.
All that. Yeah.
They actually can cover that up. On the bench, they got better on the wing. Royce O'Neal, serviceable wing player. They were so small on the wing last year that they addressed that. TJ Warren, assuming he's healthy, which is a big if, but if he can come in and stay healthy, that's a nice little scoring punch off the bench. Like they gotten pretty good. I don't think they're a contender, but like they're right at the
I actually disagree. I think they're right on the edge of that.
Well, I mean, that's
just with Kevin Durant, he's that good.
That's fair. And I think that's a fair thing. But it's like they're right on they're there. I think they're probably closer to just on the cusp of being a contender. Maybe I gotta see how Ben Simmons works.
And that's fair. But that's still pretty good. That's still, if you're Brooklyn, you play that out.
You play that out for sure. And I think one of those things with Joe Tsai's got to just say to him, going like, the trade packages aren't coming back for you, are not worthy of you, or not what you should. People are asking for a quarter on a dollar. We're not doing that. You have 4 years left on your deal. Let's just see how this plays out. And if something comes, I would make the promise of like, hey, if something comes along that we can't turn down, then we'll talk with you about it and see if it works or whatnot. But I think the bigger thing I don't think Kyrie gets moved until they have that answer. Maybe we do get answers this week, after this meeting, or I shouldn't say we, because we probably won't get it till later.
We won't, but they might.
But maybe they have answers and we can kind of start to hear rumblings of what's going on. But I think that meeting is going to be really interesting. So who knows if that's even available to the Lakers?
The second half of that, and before we move to something else, do you buy let's say they make the deal with Boston, and Boston sends back that package of, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and, picks and one more player and whatever it is. So, okay, it's a downgrade because Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant, but now you've got Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and Kyrie Irving. And like, I don't even buy the logic that like, if the Nets trade Durant, well, that automatically means they're going to be in a situation where they're going to just tear it down and try to trade Kyrie, because like that's only true if they make a trade that is a tear down trade. And I don't, that's not necessarily the result of this. I mean, it's another argument for the Lakers to just go ahead and make an Indiana deal now, because the trade that comes for Durant might not be so bad that Brooklyn says we got to turn around and again trade Kyrie Irving for something around Russell Westbrook. Like it's not such a huge downgrade to go from, to get all that stuff back with Smart and Jaylen Brown and whatever. And now you got Jaylen Brown and, Smart and Ben Simmons playing defense for you. Like, that's a tough team to score on. You could still be pretty competitive with that group.
Yeah. My only caveat to that is, especially that just in that particular Boston deal, it didn't work out so well when Kyrie played with those guys in Boston.
They've moved on. They've gotten over the beef. Haven't you heard? They're cool now.
Okay. Well, that all works out, and they're all cool because the guy moved out. And they can become friends again. But I think but that's a fair notion, right? If they don't make a tear down trade if they don't make a trade similar to what Utah made for Gobert, and they get that kind of package back, you can't necessarily just make the assumption of they're going to trade Kyrie. Right. I think they would be more open to trading Kyrie just because he's on the last year of his deal, and the way things have gone, the odds of them re-signing him are going to be pretty slim, I think. And we say this in August, knowing that a whole other 11 months in the way this league works, wild, things can change. Can
it please be at least like mid-September or something? Like, because even you get to September, Mo, you're still like a month and a half away from games. Like,
we're getting ready for the dreaded preseason games.
We're in the desert, man. This is just like we are the Israelites wandering the desert for 40 years, waiting for manna from heaven, otherwise known as Contavious Caldwell Pope, to fall from the skies. It's a terrible time for people like us. All right, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see the podcast live and look at our smiling faces. Doer, D-U-E-R, is the store, 170 South La Brea. Locked On 15 is the code. August 27th, 11 a.m. That's when we're going to be taping there. We still got. I will compensation coming. Can we do a little more, Mo?
I got plenty of time.
Oh, well, that's the spirit. All right, more coming with Mo. When we'll see everybody on Thursday. Oh no, wait, we'll see everybody on Friday.